Hello, and welcome to the MMA Mic Drop Podcast. My name is Jade Bunky, and I'm typically joined by Milo McGregor, but he is unavailable today, but don't worry, he'll be back for our next show. In the meantime, I'm going to provide picks and predictions for every single fight that's about to go down at UFC 307. So let's start about talking about the card quality. Where would we rate this card if we were to give it a grade? There's some really good fights. There's some really big names, but this fight card is lacking something. I would have to give it a C. I think there's one fight on the pay-per-view that should not be on a pay-per-view main card, and we'll get into that fight in a moment. I think even though you have Alex Pereira, arguably the biggest star in the UFC, it's either him or I think Max Holloway. I know some of you think it's Islam Makhachev, but he's right there. And he is must see TV. But it's against Khalil Rountree. While I think this will be a good fight, is that competitively the most intriguing fight? Is that the fight that's going to tell us who is the best fighter in the light heavyweight division? And I don't think so. But with that said, there are a lot of good fights. So let's get right into it. So like I said, first up, we have Khalil Rountree versus Alex Pereira. You all know by now who Alex Pereira is. And if you're new to the sport, you're about to find out. He has absolutely devastating power. He is the hardest hitter at light heavyweight and maybe beyond. I mean, he doesn't have to connect with you fully to knock you out. His strength of schedule is pretty much unmatched by somebody who just jumped into the UFC. I mean, every single fight at light heavyweight, which all of which have been wins, are against former champs. In the middleweight division, he beat two former champs. So his strength of schedule is pretty much unmatched. And lately he's been knocking everybody out. And it's been absolutely fascinating, and you try to think, why is he such a fan favorite? I mean, it's the action he delivers, but it's also, there's something about him. There's a certain mystique. He pretty much represents everything that you would think of or you'd want from a UFC champion. He has that stone cold look. He doesn't smile. He, marches down his opponent. He's very methodical and, has that devastating power. He has a bit of mystique. And, so when he headlines a fight, you must watch it. And as you know, he is an elite level kickboxer. He's a two-time, I believe, he's a two-time kickboxing champ. He's been working with Glover Teixeira to shore up his ground game, mostly his takedown defense, because, he doesn't want to end up on the ground. He wants to keep everything standing. And luckily for him, and sadly for Khalil Rountree, he's going to keep it standing. Khalil Rountree is a kickboxer. He's got incredible power as well, although it's not Alex Pereira level power. But hey, it's MMA. Anything can happen. The most interesting thing, or I'd say the biggest takeaway, is that Khalil Rountree has never attempted a takedown in his UFC career. And if you look at the people who are most likely to beat Alex Pereira, you might think of it in Ankalaev, right? Somebody with good grappling skills and so forth, where you can see, where you'll find out how much Alex Pereira has shored up his, takedown defense and so forth. We're not going to have to worry about this fight. And this fight will deliver on the action. Somebody is going to get knocked out. Khalil Rountree does have the power to knock out anybody if he connects, including Alex Pereira. But given that Alex Pereira is an elite level kickboxer, and we have another elite level kickboxer on the prelims about whom we'll speak later, in Stephen Thompson. But Alex Pereira, Stephen Thompson, Israel Adesanya, Michael Venom Page. I mean, these are the best strikers to ever come into the UFC. And so what's going to happen? I think Alex Pereira is going to knock him out. Khalil Rountree might be able to survive to the second round, but I think it's going to be a first round finish by Alex Pereira. All right, next up, we have Raquel Pennington versus Julianna Pena. This is one of those fights where it's a championship fight, but it's not really that interesting. It's a problem with the division. The women's bantamweight is the weakest division compared to the other women's divisions, which are, much more loaded with talent. And the interesting thing is we're not going to really find out who's the best in this division because the best female bantamweight is Kayla Harrison, who's fighting before is fighting earlier on the card. And so while this is an appropriate match to make, there's no critique on the matchmakers here. I just don't think it's that interesting of a fight. If you look at Pennington, I mean, she's solid everywhere. She's very steady. She doesn't have a lot of power though. She doesn't finish, and that's one of the discrepancies when I look at Pena versus Pennington is that Pena she has 8 finishes out of her 11 wins, which is which is pretty crazy. I think she can throw up some. I mean, they're both good grapplers, but I think she might be able to throw up more creative subs. And plus, Pena has been in with the best in the world, meaning Amanda Nunes twice, winning one of those, losing the other. Um, Raquel Pennington is a slight favorite. I can't remember the odds. I think it's like minus 130, 150, something like that. It's not a significant favorite. But this might be an opportunity if you want to bet. Again, don't take my advice. That's not too smart. But that would be an area where I'd look to bet in terms of Pena. I think Pena's gonna catch a sub at some point. I think the fight will probably be close, but I think Pena will get a sub in the second round. So next up, and let me just bring up this fight real quickly. It is the legendary Jose Aldo versus Mario Bautista. This is a great fight. I'm so happy this is on the main card. There is no way that Jose Aldo should ever be on a prelim fight. He still has one of the coolest walkouts in all of the UFC, despite being 38 years old. And being 38 years old, he still looks good. He looked faster than Jonathan Martinez in his last fight, and he won that fight. But he looked, and that's the thing. At bantamweight, when you're 38 years old, you think is going to fall off. It's the athleticism, it's the speed, and yeah, he's not as explosive as he used to be, but he's still faster, than a pretty high level UFC fighter. And it's going to be interesting to see how that carries against Mario Bautista. Bautista's, he's on, I believe let me click over here. I think it's this is not working right now, but Bautista, I think he's on a 6-fight win streak. He's 14-2. He's looked pretty good. And he hasn't had the strongest competition until his last fight, but he did, and then he went up against Ricky Simone and he looked good against, a really solid fighter in Ricky Simone. And he's much younger, but I think Jose Aldo still has some of that magic. I mean, we must remember that, his last fight, even though it was his fight before his last one, even though it was 2022, 2 years ago, it was against Merab. And he gave Merab more trouble than anyone has given him trouble. And, that tells me Jose Aldo is still right there. Give me Aldo to win another one in a fun fight by decision. All right, next up we have Ketlen Vieira versus Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison, I saw some odds over minus 1,000, and Kayla Harrison is going to absolutely destroy her. This is why has only one other fight in the UFC. It was against Holly Holm, completely dominant. This is the person whoever wins out of Julia Pena and Raquel Pennington, better savor the moment, because once Kayla Harrison gets a hold of either of them, it's over. And she is the future of this division. She's pretty much going to save the division. And for those of you who haven't really watched her or don't know much about her, I mean, she is an elite level talent. She's a 2-time gold medal Olympian in judo. And it's funny because I believe Ketlen Vieira has a black belt in judo, but that's not going to matter against Kayla Harrison. And she is big. I mean, she's competed, I believe in judo was at 170. She competed, I think in the PFL, what was it, like around 150, 155, something like that. I don't really watch the PFL too much, so I don't remember what that exact weight division was, but she's coming down to 135. And if you saw her in the in the press conference, I mean, she is absolutely ripped. She's going to have, I think, an advantage athletically, technically, and also in terms of strength. and I think she's going to ragdoll her. I think give me Kayla Harrison by second round finish in any way she wants. Sub, ground and pound. I don't know. I'll just go with TKO. I think she's just going to put it on her. So this will be a fun fight, and this is an appropriate main event fight, which means we're getting to the fight that should not be on a main event. Not now, not in 2024. Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland. Okay, so Dolidze looked good in his last fight because I think Anthony Smith looked poorly. I don't think Roman Dolidze at this stage in his career should really be on a main card for a pay-per-view. He's an elite, he's an exceptional grappler though. I think his stand-up, his speed has slowed a little bit. I think his stand-up is a little suspect. But we saw what he did to Jack Hermanson with that heel slicer. On the ground, he is absolutely elite. Well, let me backtrack. He's elite in terms of being able to throw up submissions and so forth. His wrestling is not as strong as his as some of his, as his grappling. But, and I think what this is going to mean is he might have a harder time controlling the fight on the ground at times, allowing maybe somebody like Kevin Holland to get back up once he takes him down. Because I don't think we can use Kevin Holland's experience against was it Brunson and Vittori, several years ago about how he's going to respond on the ground now. I'm not saying Kevin Holland is a threat on the ground per se against somebody like Dolidze, but I think he's shored up his defensive grappling quite a bit, and particularly his takedown defense. But where I think the difference is really going to come in this fight, it's really going to be that Kevin Holland's speed on his feet, his crisp striking. I think he's going to light up Dolidze. And I think Dolidze will, be able to mitigate some of the damage by taking him down at certain times. But again, I don't see him doing much down there against Holland, and that might surprise some of you. But give me Holland probably by a third round TKO. All right. Now, the fight that should be on the main card that should be swapped with the last fight I mentioned, I mean, it should be Stephen Thompson versus Joaquin Buckley. This is actually a really good fight. Typically I don't like to see 41-year-olds, fight, fighting younger guys. I mean, it's usually such a mismatch. But Stephen Thompson is so good at mitigating the rushes of stronger, bigger fighters that come in throwing all guns blazing because he's such an elite level kickboxer. As I mentioned at the start, he's one of the greatest kickboxers of all time to ever come into the UFC. I mean, he is so elite. He's been right there in the title picture for so long. He has slipped a little bit, but he's demonstrated that he's still elite, and he still has pretty good speed given his age. The question is, will that fall off at any time? Because if he's just as quick as he was 2 years ago, I think it's going to be a problem for Buckley. Because when you look at Buckley, Buckley's got ridiculous power. He's the author of arguably the greatest knockout of all time. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He's looked really good. Ruziboyev, I think that was his last opponent. I mean, that's a dangerous opponent. He looked good against him. Buckley's dangerous. I'm going to take the underdog on this one. I'm going to take Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and I think there will be times where Buckley might be able to get him down, but I think on the feet, Thompson is just too smart and too crisp, and I think he's so good at countering. I think he's going to be able to counter his aggression at times, and I think he's going to stun Buckley a couple times. Give me Stephen Thompson by a decision in a really fun fight. All right, next up, and when I look at the prelims are decent. That fight's really good. This next fight is a great fight. Marina Rodriguez versus Iasmin Lucindo. Lucindo, fast hands, a really good athlete, really young. She's only 22. I think she has all the potential in the world. She's, I think, top 10 level and beyond, might be a title contender someday. I mean, I think she's 100% legit. And, speaking of title contenders, Marina Rodriguez, she wasn't that far away. The thing is, she is 37 now. She has looked good in her last previous fights, but unlike Wonderboy Thompson, who's just looked good at 40 with his speed and his crispness still, 37 is pretty old for a lot of fighters, and she has looked good as well in her last couple fights. But I think she's going to go up against somebody that's so much quicker, so much faster. And a lot of people are taking Rodriguez. She is the slight underdog, and that's not a bad bet. But I personally, I'm taking Lucindo. I think she's gonna. I think it's gonna be a pretty one-sided but a fun fight. I think Rodriguez will have her moments. Give me Lucindo by decision and get ready for the hype train because I think this woman is the real deal. Next up, Cesar Almeida versus Ihor Potieria. Not really that interesting of a fight. It'll probably be a crowd pleaser. Almeida will probably, he's an elite level kickboxer. Potieria is pretty sloppy. Give me Almeida by first round knockout. Austin Hubbard versus Alexander Hernandez. Again, not really that interesting of a fight. Appropriate for far down on the prelims, I guess. Alexander Hernandez looked great coming out. When he started his UFC career with a knockout over Benil Dariush of all people, but has really slowed down. Austin Hubbard, this is his second time in the UFC. Not the most compelling fighter, but he does train at altitude, and this fight is in Salt Lake City. So, I expect him maybe to weather the storm and to win a decision in a fight that should be pretty entertaining, despite really no stakes attached to it. Carla Esparza is next up versus Tecia Pennington. This is a good fight. But I don't think it's going to be it's a good fight in terms of both are accomplished fighters. Esparza is a former champ, and Tecia Pennington, what was once an elite level fighter in this weight division, but I don't think this fight's going to deliver much action. So it's good on name value. I don't think it's going to be good on action. I think it's Esparza's last fight. Give me Pennington though to spoil the retirement with a close, unexciting decision. All right, Ryan Spann versus Ovince St. Preux. I have no idea why St. Preux is even fighting. Yeah, he's alternated wins and losses, but he's looked terrible in his wins. He's looked worse in his losses. I mean, he should not have been fighting in the UFC over the last 5 years. Ryan Spann, he has all the talent in the world. He's big, he's strong, he's got a good repertoire of skills. He makes really bad decisions though. He doesn't always fight to his best advantage. But I think that this is such a big mismatch. Give me Ryan Spann first round knockout. Court McGee versus Tim Means, two grizzled veterans. McGee, they both have fallen off quite a bit. I mean, they're both older. Tim Means is a little older. Let me see here. Let me click see if this is working. It's still not working. I believe he is 40 now. But I think Court McGee has fallen off more, and I think Tim Means' game translates a little bit better into older age. He's exceptional in the clinch. He likes to get in there. He likes to throw elbows. He likes to throw knees. Really get in there with that Muay Thai style. And when you get a little older, it becomes a little easier to grab onto the back of somebody's head and throw those elbows and throw up those knees and so forth. So give me Means by probably third round TKO, and pretty fun fight actually to open the card. So there you have it. Those are our picks, or those are my picks and predictions. Milo will be back next time, and thank you so much for joining. Take a moment to subscribe and click the notification button, and then one more thing: check out our video shorts. We're doing some really cool things over there. All right, thank you so much. Take care.